Hey guys, welcome to the show, 888-659-3727. I haven't heard that song in a long time. Great to be here. I'm Spencer Kobren, live doing the Ball Truth. Again, phone number 888-659-3727. I'm riding blind tonight, kind of like old school. I can't see myself online. But, who cares? I was doing the radio show with no video for like 14 years. And you know what? If I could be honest with you, it was a lot easier. I used to walk in and just sit down behind a microphone. I had a bunch of guys, working for me, running the board, sending everything through up to satellite through ISDN. And that's it. All I had to control was my volume. Now I walk into the studio. I got to do the lights. I got to do the cameras. I got to do the sound. I got to worry about what's happening in the chat room. I got to see if my color saturation is okay through GFQ. It's insanity. But, this is the evolution of broadcasting. This is what we do now. Not what it was years ago. Radio is dead. No matter what radio tells you, radio is dying. It is dying a slow, quasi-tragic, painful death. I don't know if you guys keep up with this stuff, but I think it's actually GM cars who are now going to be basically offering Wi-Fi and internet radio, kind of like a section on the radio where you can connect to internet radio now in all their cars, which is amazing. Now, obviously, we could all, a lot of people call this broadcast. A lot of people listen through their Bluetooth devices, whether it's their iPhone or their iPad, through their audio systems in their car. But now there are companies who are going to basically be getting rid of AM and FM radio and offering, from what I understand, satellite, which is dying too, in my view, and internet radio, which is absolutely amazing. So while I complain about everything it takes to put the show on the air now and how much more difficult it really is to produce and to get out there, I can't complain, I enjoy doing it. I'm glad that the Ball Truth is, on the cutting edge. Really, we were probably the longest running internet broadcast because we were running online. Even when I was on the radio, we had a live feed, one of the first live feeds in radio on my website, theballtruth.com. I remember back in the day, these guys in radio, they didn't even give a shit. They didn't care. Initially, it was almost like a joke to them. When I went to them and said, listen, I want to run the feed on my website, there was no problem. They're like, okay, you can enjoy your little internet thing on your website. We don't care. 5 years later, they were telling me that I wasn't allowed to run the entirety of the program, the entire show on the internet because of their, sponsorship issues. They started to see the light. Well, anyway, I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm glad that we are able to reach the tens of thousands of viewers that we reach on a weekly basis live when we're doing the live show. And of course, the hundreds of thousands, if not in some cases millions of people who tune into the, to the archives that are posted all over the internet. Very exciting stuff. Phone number is 888-659-3727. Again, this is the Ball Show. We talk about hair loss on this program. I'm not here to talk about internet broadcasting, but, it is exciting stuff. And I want to also thank, and you cannot forget the pivotal, that's a tough word for me, pivotal role that the GFQ network plays as far as syndicating this broadcast. I've said this before. I have been called insane for allowing this kid sitting in his boxer shorts in Queens to syndicate this program, to license this show to this, at the time, this nobody. And this is what people were telling me. Now he's one of the, actually, to me, in my view, he's actually running the only well, I don't want to say that, I'm going to get in trouble, but he's running an incredibly legitimate, profitable internet broadcast network, and no one thought he can do it. And he's doing it the right way. And I want to thank him for reaching out to me and saying that people dig the Bald Show and that he wanted to syndicate it. Again, 888-659-3727. I guess we're going to get right to the phones. Obviously, this is the Hair Loss Show. I can do an opening about some stuff that I was thinking about earlier today, some more stuff on success in spite of hair loss, which we can talk about. But we have a full board of calls, so let me just get to the phones, and then maybe I'll kind of bring that up during one of the phone calls. Let's see who this is. Hey, man, you're on the air. Who's this, and where are you calling from?
Could it be that you're insane regardless of whether or not you gave Andrew a chance?
Oh, my God. Joe Tillman. You know what? Listen, you know, and I say it all the time, I'm not well. But I think the reason I've had success in this industry and in what I do is because I'm not well. Nobody in their right mind would do what I do.
You have to be a little bit out there to even give it a shot. And you took that and you turned it into gold, as far as I'm concerned, because it's an invaluable resource for a lot of people. And you've done a fantastic job. And you're talking about Andrew, this network that he's built. What I've noticed is that he's taken the time to do it right. He's I don't know a whole lot about it, but the observations I've made is that he's taken the slow road to build this up properly, and it's worked out for him.
Well, it's definitely worked out for him, and apparently he's on hold, and he says that the sound is low. The guy's always working. You guys always working. But I think that you sound, I'm looking at my levels, you sound pretty loud. So I'm wondering, guys in the chat room, let me know if the callers are sounding good. That's all I need to know. Jesus. He says, no on hold. I know, Andrew, I know. Anyway, stop complimenting the guy. You're going to give him a big head.
We'll stop that.
Yeah. So, listen, all right. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're calling. How are you? What's new? What's going on? What do you want to talk about?
I'm good. I've had a crazy past several weeks, but I'm good. There are a lot of things to talk about. I'm seeing more info about ARTAS, the robot, the hair transplant robot,
right.
And I'm seeing it making its way into more and more clinics. And one thing I've said in the past, I remember this subject came up on one of the forums. Someone was talking about this tool, and a lot of people were slamming it at first, and I was on the fence. I wasn't crazy about the idea of a hair transplant robot being used for this industry, but one thing I said was, if they got robots doing heart surgery, then the dexterity and the delicate approach necessary for hair transplant surgery isn't out of the realm of possibility.
Well, and that's actually a good point. But I remember at one point you even telling me when we spoke about it privately that initially you thought that it was insane, just like a lot of the other guys did in the field, and that's fair. You have to understand that we have been around for a long time. We understand what it takes. We know the entire scope and the possible pitfalls of all these different types of procedures. Follicular unit extraction is a completely blind procedure. Harvesting intact follicular units by any means is not an easy task. Now, there are guys that have, really worked hard and have, worked on that learning curve, and they put the hours and the time and the effort in, and they're able to do it correctly. But sadly, it is literally a handful of guys. But now everyone is offering FUE. So in my view, the possibility of basically dummy proofing this procedure, which, a lot of guys who are online are going to be like, oh, well, you know what? It takes this artistic touch and all that stuff. All of that artistic stuff, while true, there is an artistic touch. But the basic mechanics of follicular unit extraction really is something that is just that, basic mechanics. You have to, at first, learn how to extract the grafts intact without damaging or transecting them, and also without damaging the peripheral tissue. Very important.
Exactly.
What?
You have the basic fundamentals which will never change, and that is score a follicular unit, extract it intact and without damage, without damaging the surrounding hairs as well, and ultimately with a tool that's small enough that leaves little to no visible evidence to the casual observer that anything is amiss, that anything is
Right.
different from a normal donor zone. And like you said, the handful of guys that had been really putting in the hours to figure out how to approach this safely, they laid the groundwork. But look, I mean, companies like ARTAS, they're learning and they're improving, and they understand what it takes or what's necessary to make this a cosmetically viable procedure, which is the whole point of it to begin with. It has to be cosmetically viable. You can't have visible evidence that anything was done to begin with, else the procedure is a failure. Right?
That's right.
Regardless of how good the growth is, if you can tell something's been done, then you failed. And so you get the punch small enough, you get the distribution of extraction wide enough to prevent a dramatic drop-off in density in any one area, and you got a recipe for success.
Well, and also
I understand that.
And I think this is the thing that I think that most consumers really don't understand. And I say consumers because that's what it is. You have to understand that if you don't, as patients, as prospective patients, if you don't understand that the industry looks at you as consumers, then you might as well not even be considering surgical hair restoration, because that's what it's all about. As great as the doctors that we work with, as great as the guys who I have embraced and have allowed into our organization, the bottom line is the bottom line. Now, these guys may be making the right decisions. They may be really focusing on patient selection and doing the right thing and really learning their craft, but there's still a business aspect to cosmetic surgery, and people have to understand that. So what's happening now in the field, I don't mean to cut you off, but what's happening now in the field is the old guard is kind of, losing its grip. Follicular unit extraction is really, taking over the field, and, the consumer has spoken. So more guys now feel pressured to offer FUE. These are guys who have been doing great strip for many years. They feel pressured to offer FUE. However, when the time was right to really learn FUE back in 2001 and 2002, when guys were finally starting to embrace it and starting to experiment with it, a lot of these guys who are currently in the field did not want to even take a look at it. Their practice was doing fine. They didn't need to move in that direction. The new guys who are just getting into the field, the guys who have never performed hair transplantation, the guys who are just getting into cosmetic surgery, or the board-certified plastic surgeons, this is the new crop of hair transplant surgeon. And love it or hate it, this is the way the field is evolving. So if there is a device, whether it be the ARTAS or something else, which I'm sure there will be, that makes it easier for physicians to perform truly state-of-the-art hair restoration without damaging patients, without just hanging up a shingle and saying they are experts, but really providing a vehicle to make them experts in a shorter period of time. To me, that's only a good thing in the long run. Yes, the guys who have been in the industry for a long time, they're certainly going to still have an advantage, because they're going to really understand the nuances of the procedure in a way that these new guys, won't necessarily understand right away. But at the very least, people aren't going to be harmed. And to me, that's huge.
I agree. And, what you said earlier on in that point is something I've said for forever, is that, one should never forget that this is a business. And like you said, the clinics and doctors do look at each patient as a consumer. And it is those clinics and doctors that endeavor to approach their consumer the right way. Those are the ones that are doing things properly and getting the good and great results, and the ones that have the great reputations. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it should be done. Any business. It doesn't matter if it's, hair restoration, nose jobs, car salesman, what have you. If they do their job with a bit of a conscience and pick and choose to make sure that that they're bringing in consumers that understand what they're getting into and they have the right characteristics and not taking advantage of them just for a quick buck, then that makes the industry as a whole look better. And hopefully, if this continues, then it'll pull the image that hair restoration has out of the nether regions of cosmetic surgery and put it into more of the mainstream.
Well, honestly, the truth is, I'm certainly more involved with mainstream cosmetic surgery, and I have a lot of plastic surgeons who contact me who want to get into hair. And the truth is, surgical hair restoration is still looked at as the redheaded stepchild of aesthetic plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery, which it shouldn't be, because frankly, it is one of the most, I think it's one of the most difficult procedures to perform correctly on a consistent basis, because there's just so many variables and there's so much that goes into cosmetic surgery. It's not like having a nose job where, if there's an issue, you can kind of see if the issue, an issue arising within a month or two, and you can make those corrections, and the patient is kind of prepared for, maybe they need correction, or, at least they kind of see what they're getting. With hair, it takes them 6, 7, 8 months before they realize that something might have gone wrong.
And I think that with hair restoration surgery, you have a bigger impact visually and cosmetically than you would with other aspects of cosmetic surgery. I think you certainly have a bigger, how can I put it, a bigger overall cosmetic change.
I also think you have a bigger freak flag flying if it doesn't come out well. With a bad nose job, maybe the patient isn't going to be completely satisfied with the result, but the general public probably isn't going to notice that there's something wrong. But a bad
I agree with that.
But a bad hair transplant, it's like you're waving that flag. You are a man-made freak, and you live that
experience on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that for sure, and I agree with that. And so I think there's a strong. I think there's more pressure to get it right, and so like you said, it does take a fair bit of additional skill and attention to detail for someone to get a hair transplant right as compared to rhinoplasty.
And that's why I think it's actually unfair for surgical hair restoration to be categorized in the way in which it is in the field of aesthetic plastic surgery and cosmetic surgery, because it is such a difficult procedure to perform well, and there's so many variables, and you're dealing with a finite amount of tissue of hair that can be moved. Again, with breast augmentation and all, while you want to get it right the first time, correction of poor prior work, in most cases, there's a little bit more leeway than when it comes to surgical hair restoration, because once those grafts are moved, if they're wasted, if they're transected, if they're destroyed, they're lost.
Yeah.
That's it. You lose that shot of having that great outcome. With a botched breast augmentation, yes, there can be some significant lifelong, irreversible damage in certain cases, but those are the extreme cases. In most cases, the procedure could be corrected, and the person can live a very fulfilling, normal life without feeling, that obviously it's time, and it's an issue of having to go through a second procedure, and the possible complications that could arise and all that stuff. But if all goes well, you're not thinking in the back of your mind, well, wait a second, I'm missing all that tissue that could have been used, that could have been used in this procedure.
Yeah.
So it's a different animal.
That, specifically referencing breast augmentation, if it is a job that's not up to standards, it's something that's not being broadcast to everyone that's around you because it's hidden, right?
Well, honestly, to me, it's like pizza. There's no bad pizza. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
terrible thing to say.
yeah,
I'm just kidding. Everyone who's had bad breast augmentation, I'm just joking.
yeah. But I mean, again, though, the point is with a bad hair transplant, there's no hiding it. I mean, you can wear a cap of some sort, but in reality, it's difficult to hide, it's difficult to conceal, and it advertises itself to the world, and I think that's another reason why it's so much more psychologically impacting. I mean, I can't say more of a psychological impact because it's relative. But,
That's right.
But it's definitely something that's more visible to those around the patient that had the bad work, and that's I think that's easy to figure out.
And listen, this is there's guys online, like you said, they're bashing the artist, whatever it is. And I'm not saying I'm not saying thumbs up 100% to everyone who has the artist, but I do believe that 2015 is going to be a major shift in this industry, and whether it's the artist or some other devices that may be coming down the pike, I really see it being a place that's going to cause a lot less harm. In our little world, in our bubble of the top 65 surgeons in the world that are in the IHRS and who are posting on the forums, even within that bubble, you see people who believe they've been harmed. You see people who may not have the best outcomes. Maybe they have unrealistic expectations. Maybe something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nature of cosmetic surgery. My whole thing on this
Right.
broadcast and everything that I do is I will not sell a surgery. Period. I will lead you in the right direction. You make your decision, your due diligence. I always say surgery is a last resort, and anytime you're considering it, realize that could be a possible bad outcome, no matter who does the surgery. But within this bubble, we're seeing the best work money can buy. What all these guys aren't seeing, who aren't part of what we do and on the message forums, is the really crappy work that is still being performed day in and day out by hundreds of guys in the U.S., maybe thousands actually of guys who aren't part of even the main organization, which is the ISHRS, the educational organization. And these guys who are just kind of these rogue doctors who are either getting their hands on a neograft now or actually doing strips, and they're doing it really poorly. They're still doing mini and micrografts. That still exists. So imagine if these guys who want to get into the industry, I mean, they're going to have to be willing to spend $250,000 to do it. So there is a slight barrier to entry there. But, I mean, I know you can lease the equipment. But imagine if they were able to get their hands on something that at the very least, their very first procedure, they're going to get a decent outcome. To me, that's amazing. And that's what I'm hoping for. I'm just hoping it's going to get better and better.
Well, I think I think there's no question it's going to get better and better. I mean, look, when you have a device that has this much research into it, that has this much backing, that has this much input from world leading doctors, and a real desire to do better. Not to mention the fact that the financial attraction of being able to bring in all these other doctors that you're talking about. I think that the only place that this thing can go is up.
Well, but you also know that my stance initially, back in 2011, I was like, this is, it's not happening. I mean, I was seeing, now obviously the science or the technology was still amazing. But in my view, it wasn't going to produce the results that I thought were acceptable. And what I was seeing was not great. It really wasn't. But it was in its infancy. So it's just it's the way that it is. But you know what? The company listened, which I think is really important.
And that's the mark of a good company. They listen. They're making the improvements. And look, like you said, you're saying no way. I think everyone that had any sort of experience in this industry in 2011, when it was first announced and mentioned, I think everyone rolled their eyes on some level. I know I did. You weren't on board with it, but
well, I did. I was willing to do.
With anything, you see improvements, and if things are for the better, then there's no reason to change your mind. Or not to change your mind, because if you don't, then you're just lying to yourself.
Well, this
right?
is what I was
And,
willing to do. I was willing to do like the first live artist hair transplant through the ball tooth. I thought it was groundbreaking and it was interesting. But even during that broadcast, if you go back and you look at it, while I'm very complimentary and I think the technology was, it was out of this world to see what it was capable of doing, I was still hedging and still saying, you know what? I don't think it's ready for prime time. And, Dr. Harris was gracious enough to kind of, not get upset about that and just realize that I'm here. Look, I want to show the world what it is and that this could be the future of surgical hair restoration. This is a really awesome, it's obviously it's great broadcasting. It's very cool for people to see. But I don't know if I would send a family member to have an artist back in 2011. I'm happy to say that these guys have really, they're up in their game. So I don't care what some of these guys, these staunch guys online are saying. I definitely believe that either this technology or technology like it is going to be what's going to be the real breakout for this industry. And there's going to be so many people who are going to have surgical hair restoration who never would have considered it before. And in my view, a lot less damaged people. And I'm not saying it could be, there could be some company in China right now that's building a better mousetrap. But it's just the fact that the technology is there.
Well, if one company can do it, which ARTAS looks like they're doing, and make the improvements that we've been talking about, then other companies are certainly taking notice.
Maybe I'll build one. Maybe we'll get together. We'll build a robot.
Let's do it. You can get that the Lego set now that you can build robots. I'll come down. We'll set up shop in your garage, and we'll get to work.
Look, we will be the Bill Gates and Steve Jobs of surgical hair restoration. I think we can make it happen. Because we understand the industry. That's the difference.
That's for sure.
Anyway, 888-659-3727. Listen, we got some calls on the line. Let's take some. All right, I'm going to make sure that you are. What happened to my video? I'm going to make sure that you are potted up correctly. Mm-hmm. So let me. I hope this doesn't hang up. I don't think it will. Okay. Hey, you're on the air, man. Who's this?
Good evening, Spencer. Good evening, Joe.
How are you, man? Hey, listen, Joe. Joe, before we get to you, are you able to hear the call well through the phone? Are you able to hear? Were you able to hear us? Okay, on the phone system.
The phone, yeah. Through the phone, yeah.
Okay, because according to Mr. Zarian, the big boss, he's apparently on hold too. He can't hear it.
Well, I'm not trying to contradict your boss, but not
to say. Well, not that I care. If he was my boss, my life would be a lot easier. Believe me, I would like to have a boss. But
he's not your boss?
He's the boss of GFQ. Let's put it that way.
Oh, is your wife your boss?
My wife is the only boss that I have.
Oh. All right,
maybe one day Andrew will be my boss. He can buy me out. I'll work for him.
Well, maybe one day I'll buy you out.
That'd be awesome. Get the hell out of here, man.
Let me just make a few quick points, if I may. First of all, I have to take a brief moment to strongly castigate and attack DirecTV.
Why?
I'm demanding that all hair loss sufferers immediately cancel their subscriptions to DirecTV.
What happened?
Why?
Yeah.
They put out a commercial. I don't know if you or Joe saw this. I'm sure many of your millions of viewers saw it. With Rob Lowe. And he plays multiple characters. They had one commercial showing the handsome Rob Lowe. Then all of a sudden, they did a side-by-side parallel with the homely Rob Lowe.
And he was bald.
Guess what? No. Well, pretty close. A Noah 6 with a crazy comb-over. So they're insinuating that baldness is ugly.
Well, why do you think we do this show? The entire world does. That's why we're so upset about it. Let me play your opening.
Joe from Staten Island.
Excuse me.
Would you like to reiterate it?
My name is.
Have you heard it? Excuse me.
Joe from Staten Island.
Joe, come on, that's nothing new. I mean, listen, it's the last bastion of political incorrectness. You know, it's not like you can put somebody out there, you know, with a, you know, to have some like, you know, good-looking actress, and all of a sudden, put her in a fat suit, and and that would be politically correct. Can't do that. It's just, it doesn't work. But the bald thing, the
Rob
comb
Lowe-
over, the bald
Sorry.
wig, that's fine. Guys
But
just
Rob
have to
Lowe's
deal
a
with it.
man who was in his 50s, was blessed with a full head of hair, and he didn't suffer from this disease.
He was blessed with a lot of things.
And I think, he should have been. Well, it's probably not him. It's probably his producers. He's only an actor. He's not
What
a
is
writer.
it? Dude, the guy wants to get paid. The last big thing he did was what was that? That was that movie with Demi Moore. I don't know.
No,
he did some.
I
He did some
sent you
TV
that.
show. What was that?
West End or East End or something?
Yeah, the East End. East End.
Yeah.
No, I'll have to disagree with you on that, Spencer. The last movie he did was he played JFK in a Bill O'Reilly produced movie, killing Kennedy.
I was trying. I was just trying to be funny, Joe. I couldn't finish the line because I couldn't remember the name of the movie because I'm almost 50 myself, and I'm drinking scotch.
I was wondering what you were ingesting in that glass. I thought it was possibly iced tea.
Yeah. That's a good. That's a good possibility on this show, Joe.
Well, I like you guys to comment. You don't mind.
Go ahead.
If you joke off a comment. All the breaking news. I've been so busy dissecting the video presentations of Mesa with Replacel, Histogen, and what's going on with allergen. I mean, these, to me, I'm not trying to disrespect you guys, far exceed anything that the artist robot could possibly do. Because all the robot is doing is moving one hair to another.
That's no disrespect at all. The truth is, we deal in the present, and this is what we're talking about, what's happening in the hair transplant industry. And the future, if these treatments come to fruition, then that's the holy grail, dude. Don't you think we want that? There's a lot more money in Replacel and doctors getting involved in that in these holy grail treatments than moving hair. They can charge exactly the same amount and they don't have to do the work. And frankly, a technology like the ARTAS, if in fact it takes thousands of injections to make this process happen. Imagine if you can do that robotically.
Well, that's a very good point, Spencer. I never thought of that because my studies have shown that it will take multiple injections, Replacel and Histogen. That's an excellent point. I want to commend you on that.
If ARTAS is listening, be prepared for that too, and I'm sure they are.
I'm sure they're smarter than any of us are, Spencer. You know what I'm saying? Now let me just briefly summarize for the audience what's going on. Replacel is now entering phase 2 with Shishido in Japan, because Japan has recently, as you know, the legislature has enacted very lax stem cell laws.
Yes.
So they can release this product in Japan just on phase 2 alone. I mean, right now they're growing about 12% regrowth of hair right now with a very low dosage.
Right.
And to me, 12% is an awful lot of hair. If you're at 6 and you lost 12% of your hair, you lost approximately 6,000 hairs, which translates to 3,000 grafts.
Right.
3,000 grafts ain't nothing. And maybe Joe could chime in on this. I mean, 12% of your hair, to me, is pretty significant.
Well, I think you guys are getting confused with the percentages. And and maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. But it's not as though, okay, maybe it's one injection or one group of injections that they've been able to grow, a 12% of a person's hair back in a given area. But it doesn't mean that you're only going to be able to grow 12% of your overall head of hair. It may take multiple injections to grow, greater percentages in the areas that are injected. But it's not just like, okay, you take this injection, you get these cells, and you're going to grow 12% of your hair back. I don't think that's what it means. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. Joe from Staten Island.
No, but David Hall has been quoted as saying that in the future he will be able to turn a NOAID 7 into a NOAID 1.
Yes.
That's what he stated.
Well, I've spoken to him on many occasions, and I think that's obviously his goal. That's what Repliso wants to do. And I believe that at some point this is going to happen. But if it doesn't happen for 3 years, if it doesn't happen for 4 years, if it doesn't happen for 5 years, my goal is to make sure that the industry is as safe as it can be for the guys who are getting stuff done today and who don't want to put their life on hold.
I'm sorry, but please expand on that. When you say 2 or 3 years, do you mean in Japan or do you mean in the United States?
Listen, I know that things can be expedited in Japan. I get that. But it doesn't mean that Replicel is going to be ready, even though they're going to be able to work with it within a shorter time frame. So you guys have to be aware of that. It doesn't mean it's going to be ready for prime time just because they're going to be able to push it through in phase 2 in Japan. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does, but I believe this will have ancillary effects. If it is proven in Japan and is working in Japan, there's no way that it won't be in the Bahamas or something like that in a forthwith fashion. I do not. There's so much money to be made off of this.
Forthwith, I like that. Joe, listen,
yes, well, Spencer, that's what we used when I was a police officer. That was the terminology we used, forthwith.
That's NYPD talk.
85 Forthwith Central. Have units respond at this time.
Joe, listen, it is exciting, and I read the message forum today, and I see what's going on, and everyone's just over the moon about this possibility, and they should be, but it still does not mean it's coming to fruition anytime soon. There's a greater chance now that we're going to get this technology sooner than we expected, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. So.
No, it's not.
Just be cautiously optimistic, and let's watch and wait.
I do believe, though, within the next year, I'm convinced you will have Bimatoprost formalgin on the market, a topical.
Look, I agree, too. And let me tell you something. I am getting a little tired of painting my bald spot, I got to tell you. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but if I can find a way to just get a little bit more hair back there without risking the chance of telogen effluvium or shock loss, then I'm probably going to do something. So believe me, I'm in the same boat. I want something sooner rather than later.
Well, Spencer, as you know, I'm not a physician, but I've met you on several occasions. I don't have to strongly disagree with you on that. I've dissected your hair close up in person. And my expert opinion, I'm a quasi hair loss expert, as you know.
Yes.
I do not see any hair loss in you at all.
Well, and I appreciate that, but dude, come on, it's a sham. It's like cotton candy at this point. It's ridiculous. I appreciate that, but it takes a lot of work to make it look as okay as I think it looks. But I still, the young guys in the message forums might disagree with you, dude. I've been called comb-over boy, some nasty stuff, really mean, hurtful things. Right, Joe Tillman?
From who it's coming from.
Look, I can say with absolute certainty that Spencer Kobren is the quintessential artiste when it comes to, quote-unquote, painting his bald spot.
Thank you.
To the point where, having seen it in person,
you have to look close.
This is before the inebriation began.
Right.
That it is an absolute work of art.
Thank you. I appreciate
absolute
that. I'm like that Asian. You ever see that Asian guy? That Asian guy on YouTube who's actually on Penn and Teller's bullshit, and he's the guy who has the best comb over in the world. That guy. I mean, what he's able to do with a can of spray paint and hairspray, it's like a miracle. I've never seen anything like it. I'm gonna have to put that on the Bald Truth.
I need to look. I need to look for that. I've never seen that.
It's a work. It's unbelievable. The guy looks good.
Used to paint the entire bald spot on my own head with Ron Popeil's Good Look or good-looking hair, GLH hair in a can.
It's good stuff.
I do have experience in that regard that I used to use many, many years ago to my own detriment. I've never seen a better job than what you've done on yourself.
Well,
the color matches perfectly. It's not too much. It's not too little. It's like I said, it's a work of art.
I allow a slight amount of scalp to still show, just so there's a natural thing happening. It takes a little work, you know. I mean, a little finesse. You have to learn how to do it, but it can be done.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, I appreciate the compliment.
Layperson,
yeah,
who would look at you would not say you're a bald.
But that's the point. That's the point.
That's the point.
I out myself because this is what I do. Now, do you think, and there are people who I've gone to high school with, college with, you know, old girlfriends, you know, I mean, I talk about painting my bald spot. How many guys do you know would talk about that, admit that? No. Believe me, in the real world, if I wasn't in this business, do you think I would say anything? No way. But you know what? I want guys to know that, you know, there are ways to cope, and not everything's perfect. I take a medication that so many guys are afraid to take, but it works for me. And I've been on it for over 20 years. Which, if guys who are just tuning in, it's Propecia or finasteride. And I paint my bald spot. That's it. I'm almost 50 years old. There's a lot worse things. You know, I mean, God forbid at some point I'm going to have to, I mean, when I was gaining some weight, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to wear a bra. You know, luckily I was able to reverse that. What was that, Joe?
Are you suffering from gynecomastia?
No, it's just old man fat boob. That's what it was. It was too much fried chicken and booze. That's all. That was reversible.
Well, I told you. Well, when Norman Orenreich was transforming me into a woman, he made me grow breasts. Or the female hormones they gave me.
Well, it was probably a good look for you. And actually, now that I know you better, you probably didn't mind.
Well, when I couldn't achieve an erection at all when I was growing breasts, I got a little concerned. My hair was still falling out. I said, what's going on here, Doc? He said, well, your DHT levels are decreased by 90%. I said, that's great, but my hair's still falling out, and I'm growing breasts, and I can't achieve erection.
Let me tell you, Orenreich was he was really something in his day, man, and he retired a very wealthy man.
He's still alive, the bum. He's 94.
And he's got a great head of hair.
Yes, he does.
Unbelievable. Joe, listen. Listen, we're going to take some more phone calls. All right?
Okay, I want to thank you. Let me just say thank you very much for your time, Spencer and Joe. And Spencer, we're making a major announcement from Allergen will be coming in January on their Phase 2 beach route.
Well, look, dude, you know I'm excited about it, and I want you to be the first to get it out there. On this show.
There are no guarantees. I'm not saying how well it works or how well it doesn't work. Thank you very much for your time. I will now be going to sleep and entering a world of beautiful hair.
Okay, enjoy. Good night, Joe.
And there's 17 virgins waiting. And there's 17 virgins waiting for me. Good night, Joe.
Take it easy. 888-659-3727. I don't know who this is. This may be Andrew Zarian. Let's see. Hey, man, you're on the air. Who's this? Hello, you're on the air. Hello.
Hey, what's going on, Spencer? This is Carl. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina.
Hey, Carl, welcome to the show. What can I do for you, man?
Hey, I just wanted to say I'm a big fan. First of all, I've been listening for the last several months. Learned a lot. Definitely try to tune in when I can.
Oh, I'm glad. So what's your situation?
All right, well, I'll try to give you the cliff notes so I don't get too long-winded here. But basically, I'm 36 now. I started getting a really mature hairline as a teenager. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm gonna try to simmer down a little bit.
Dude, it's okay. Take a deep breath, and I always tell people to drink before they call the show.
I'm trying. Yeah, I've had a couple beers here. I'm trying to simmer down a little bit. I guess it's just it's not something everybody does every day. So it's kind of nerve-wracking.
I get it, man. I get it. So just talk to me like you're talking to your buddy on the phone.
Sounds good. So anyway, I started getting a mature hairline when I was a teenager. I would say maybe when I was like 18 or 19. So I didn't really get teased about it or anything, but it had bothered me for, as long as I can remember. Like, I'd say right around 18 or 19, my forehead started getting wider, and I basically had the same hairline as my dad when I when I was not even out of high school.
Yeah, that's
unfortunately
that's not easy, man. That's a tough situation.
Rough.
And Joe Tillman has experienced the same thing.
Yeah, I went through it from the other angle. My crown was thinning when I was 17, and it was pointed out to me in the lunchroom of my high school in front of everyone. So I've been there, buddy. I know.
So I went in the military, and then I did 3 years in the Navy, and then I guess during that time I kind of experimented with the buzz cuts and everything, and I just wasn't digging it, and people were giving me crap about how it looked, and I had a big forehead and I've got a big head, this and that. And at that point I was only probably 135 pounds, so it probably did look a little awkward,
Right.
But
so
anyway,
how you went to military when you were what, 18?
Yeah, just after high school. I took a year off, and then I went in when I was 19. Actually,
well, thanks for your service, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. So, the hairline kind of held for a while, and then when I got out, I wanted to do something about it, before it got any further, and I started researching the Propecia and everything, and I think probably within the span of 6 hours, I researched it, made the decision to get the script, and I went to the doctor, and I was on it that evening.
Oh, good for you!
Like that, this is the thing for me, And at that point, there wasn't a lot of this clamor about all the side effects and everything.
Look, dude, honestly, if I would have read the shit that's online today, there's no way. First of all, you wouldn't see me behind this mic. I would never have had this career.
Exactly, yeah.
I wouldn't have popped that first pill. And it's unfortunate because there's so many guys out there that aren't taking advantage of really something that works because of, a relatively small percentage of guys. But I get it. I understand it.
I mean, I had a couple of months there where I wasn't very interested in sex, and and I was probably a little depressed at that point too. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
What caused it, but I just pushed through, and here I am now, like almost 13 years later, and my hairline looks pretty much like it did back then. So
yeah, I love
20s in the better.
I love a story like that. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I love hearing stories like yours because there's so many guys out there who, they don't take the time to call in, or they're not spending time on message forums because they don't need to. They've kind of got past it, and the drug has worked for them, and they've lived their lives.
Exactly. And, I haven't had any crown issues. I think maybe my temples and the points of my hairline have maybe crept back just a little bit. I would say maybe over the course of those 12 years, maybe like a quarter of an inch.
Yeah, and that's pretty typical, but that's good.
Yeah, and so I can still pull it off, but I guess part of the reason I'm calling is because I guess this year, I don't know, maybe I just was reading too much on the forums and this and that, but I guess I'm just kind of getting a little anxious about how long, it can really hold up. And, I just sort of this rumination about how, is it gonna keep on keeping on, or am I gonna have to look for an alternative? Am I gonna have to up my nose?
Can I answer this?
Well, I'll let you answer this in a second, but here's the first rule of the forums. Stay off the forums. Okay? That's rule number one. Second rule, don't go to the forums. Because the forums, sadly, the vast majority of guys who spend a lot of time on the message forums, for some reason or another, they're just a lot of unhappy guys. While there's great information, I think the forums are important. If you're in a good spot in your life and if you're doing okay, don't let other people bring you down. Don't let this fear mongering or other people's experiences, kind of infiltrate your life and the way you feel, because you have to just deal with your own experience. You took the drug, you're doing well on the drug. There's no reason to think Listen, I've read everything. You know how many people have called me over the years or have written me over the years? I've been on this stuff for over 20 years. If I concentrated on every guy that said, oh, it's a 5-year cutoff, or there's an 8-year cutoff, or there's a 10-year cutoff,
Right.
I'd be freaking out. Joe, I'll let you answer
And
the
that's
guy's
kind of
question.
where.
Go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, I understand completely what you're talking about, and it's easy to get scared from reading these things on the forums, and just like Spencer said, stay away from the forums, and you'll be doing yourself a service by not reading these things that will cause you concern. But what I can tell you from experience, not just my own use of the medication, I've been on it for 13 years myself. But from also dealing with literally thousands of people firsthand over the past 11 years as a professional in the industry, that this myth of the 5-year cutoff is exactly that. It's a myth. I have not seen any reliable evidence that when someone's taking this medication and they're having a positive result from their use of the medication, that somehow at 5 years a switch is thrown and it just stops working. It doesn't make sense. I think that why some people think this is because the medication maybe not be working 100%. Like it hasn't completely stopped the hair loss, and it's taken roughly 5 or so years for the creep, as it were, to be noticeable to the naked eye, right? And so I think that's maybe where some of this comes from. But at the same time, the medication isn't really shown to work as well on the front as it does the back. The back is where it's supposedly working the best. And so if you do have any sort of creep with your recession, like you mentioned you had, then that's typical. That's a normal experience with a long-term finasteride user. And so I don't think you really have anything to worry about with it suddenly stopping its effectiveness.
Yeah, and I think, the way that it works is I think eventually your genetics may catch up to you to some degree. It's depending on how strong the genetics are. But I definitely lost ground. I've been on for 20 years. I have definitely lost some ground, but it's been so slow. And I started the process at 21 years old. So, no matter what the situation is, even if you do start to lose a little bit of ground, you're what, 36 now?
36,
36. I mean, just keep doing what you're doing. And stay off the forums.
Absolutely.
Really stay off. I appreciate you being a fan of the program, but stay off the forums because you sound like a guy that made the right decision for him. And don't let everybody else's, dissatisfaction in life creep into your life.
No, I appreciate that, and I even take the extra step when I go in for my script every year. I get a panel of blood work done so that I can check, just see how my organs look. And then this past time, I actually had them just look at my hormones. Unfortunately, I didn't do that when I first started.
Yeah.
But I did have them check everything out this time, and he said everything looked normal. And I mean, we're talking about almost 13 years of therapy here. So
I just had a complete blood panel, liver enzymes, everything that I needed to get done, for a man of 49 years old. Including the finger exam, which I don't want to even talk about. But I've got a lot of stuff happening to me now, just to be checked out, and I've been lucky enough where everything is perfect. It's fine, but I'm not saying that at some point I'm not going to get some rare form of some sort of rare disease that they may eventually correlate with this drug. I doubt that's going to happen, but there's always a possibility. You're putting a drug in your body every single day. But the same goes for what you eat every day or what you drink every day. I don't think my doctor likes the idea that I'm drinking, I can drink 2 large glasses of Jack Daniels in a sitting. That's probably not good for me. But so far, so good. My liver looks pretty good.
Exactly. And there was a point in my research a couple months ago where I was reading about these guys that are just stopping cold turkey because they're freaking out. And I mean, at this point, like with what they know about like post-finasteride syndrome and that kind of stuff, it's like I think you're almost doing yourself a disservice to get off the medication so abruptly. If anything, you should stay on it until we know more. If you've done well and you've had success. I mean,
I think
don't freak out and then just flush it down the toilet.
I personally agree with you, but again, that's just my personal opinion. I'm not a physician. I'm also,
right.
When it comes to post-finasteride syndrome, I know that it is now kind of coined as something that is a real, syndrome that happens to more guys than we ever thought something like this could happen to. It's just really hard. You're not seeing the clinical data. Just because someone starts a foundation, just because there's a couple of doctors that are kind of, either pandering to a specific group of people or who really believe that this is a real syndrome, doesn't mean that it, the data backs it up. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. There's certainly a subset of guys that truly seem to be suffering from this. But we don't know what it is.
True.
We don't know if it's a combination of something else they're putting into their body with finasteride. We don't know if it's just finasteride. I mean, Joe Tillman, what do you think?
I think that what you said about the doctors pandering, I think that's interesting because some of the reports I've read about this issue. We've discussed this privately where some of the studies were actually not studies; they were interviews of people that had already been experiencing side effects from the medication, and I think that's a running theme with this.
Well, the main published study by Irwin was basically just it was basically a survey, and
of patients of people that had pre-existing conditions already
of a group of patients from a particular website who have already been complaining about the side effects. So that's kind of an interesting call, and it's interesting that the media would pick up on it the way that it did because it does. It's a sexy story, no pun intended. Yeah. So, but then again,
like the first 10 Google hits. If you Google Propecia side effects, you'll see Dr. Irwin's study in the first couple pages, and it's about what 50 patients.
Oh yeah. But listen. Yeah. But it's not to say that it's this stuff isn't happening to these people. It's not to say that these guys aren't truly suffering, because they are. They really are. But we don't know why. The data just doesn't support it yet. It doesn't mean that it won't at some point. But all I can say, and I get so much shit for just talking about my experience on this drug and the experience of those who are close to me, and also for the thousands of patients who people I know in the industry have treated. According to the doctors who are prescribing this drug on a daily basis, they are not seeing this happen. I know one doctor had one patient who complained of adverse side effects after they stopped taking the drug, and it was for a very short period of time, and eventually they subsided. So, who knows? Who knows?
And, my biggest concern, though, is still, like, the long-term efficacy, I guess. And, the only other thing I wanted to ask you about is actually having to do with a restoration clinic here where I live. Because I'm just kind of, at this point, I just kind of want to have a backup plan, I guess.
Where'd you say you were, in Charlotte?
I'm in Charleston.
Charleston, okay.
And, I just don't think I can really ever pull off the bald look, I just don't see it happen.
Neither can I, man. I always say I look like some guy from the future. It's not for me. I will slap on a hairpiece, get a hair transplant, whatever it takes to live my life looking like I have a full head of hair. And I'm not ashamed to say it.
Exactly. And so, if I get to that point where I'm just not comfortable in my own skin anymore, I mean, I want to have a backup plan, and I researched the best doctors and everything, and I understand about the IAHRS.
Right.
And this doctor, I don't know if you want me to say his name on the air, but
say whatever you want.
Practice here. It's Carolina Hair Surgery, and he's got a practice here in Charleston. He's got an office in Columbia, South Carolina, and he's also got an office in Charlotte.
His name is
Charlotte.
Voorhees, right?
Jerry Cooley.
Dr. Michael
It's
Voorhees.
Jerry Cooley.
No, it's Voorhees.
Oh, Voorhees.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Voorhees. Sorry.
Well,
Voorhees.
all I can say is
there
this.
anything you can tell me?
This is what I can say about Dr. Voorhees. Dr. Voorhees did start his application with the IHRS and never completed it. So he was not rejected from the group, and he is someone that we would definitely consider to be a part of things because we really haven't had the opportunity to take a full look. So I really can't, at this point, I can't say yes, go ahead. We recommend the guy. And there are guys who are not part of the IHRS. I would certainly say, look, this guy never applied, but I know he's doing great work. But Dr. Voorhees did apply to the organization, never completed his application for whatever reason. We don't pick up the phone to pursue him. So we haven't had the opportunity to really see a lot of his patients. This is what I do know about him. He's really focusing on the neograft hair transplant and utilizing the neograft. And at this point, there are only 2 practices that I'm aware of that is utilizing the neograft in a way that is, providing really good results. One is Bauman Medical down in Boca Raton, and he basically jerry-rigged the thing. He doesn't use the suction. And he's basically just using it as a device to score the grafts, basically as a motorized punch.
Okay.
And there's another group called Greco Medical or Greco Hair Transplants down in Sarasota, Florida. And I know that they're using the neograft, and they seem to be getting really good results. And I think that they they're not using it out of the box either. All these other guys, to be candid, are using it, from what I understand, right out of the box, the way it was intended to be used. And I have an issue with possible damage being done to the grafts. Now, they're scoring the grafts really well, but there's something called possible desiccation. Desiccation is drying of the grafts that can be caused by suction and bringing these grafts through this long tube via suction. And you can actually dry out grafts. Also, the vast majority of the guys who are getting their hands on the neograft aren't really doing a lot of the procedure themselves. A lot of the
and that's if I could just interject for just 1 second, that's one thing I really noticed about this guy is that he claims on his website that to do 100% of not only the extraction but the placement of each and every graft himself.
You know what? I actually think I remember him saying that to me. And again, I'm not seeing the work. So I'm not, and this guy could be the greatest thing out there, the greatest guy using the neograft. He has not completed his application. I wouldn't jump into anything. I would ask him about, how he utilizes it, if he utilizes suction, how he creates his recipient sites, if he's using cut-to-size blades or if he's using hypodermic needles, how many techs work with him, and how long have the techs been with him in his practice, how many neograft procedures has he performed, things of that nature. I have nothing bad to say about the guy. I have not received any complaints.
He apparently uses what's called a Hans or a Hans implanter pen for the placement of the grafts because he feels like it yields a better result, frankly. And he even offers something like an 85 or 90% graft survival guarantee, where he'll go back and touch it up for free if
here's
they
the
all
thing.
don't survive.
Here's the thing, and again, I have nothing bad to say about him. I haven't received a single complaint that I can recall about his practice.
Right.
Guarantees, survival guarantees, all that shit. No one, can really. I mean, yeah, you get a guarantee, but you're losing those grafts forever. So basically, you're getting a guaranteed piece of crap. What are you getting? What do they guarantee? They're going to move more hair for you. You've already lost the hair.
They guarantee that they have to do extra work.
Yeah, they're going to do extra work for free, and that's it. And we'll guarantee you. You know what? If we destroy your donor area, we're going to move more of it for you for free, and hope that we don't destroy the rest. That's the guarantee. Now, again, nothing against Voorhees, and I actually, I've spoken to him. I had a long conversation with him. I think he's a nice guy. I think he really seems to really care about his patients. And I have a feeling he's
think so,
doing.
too.
I have a feeling he's doing pretty good work. I just haven't had the opportunity to really, if he didn't finish that application, it doesn't. Nothing else comes over, through my desk, so I haven't had a chance to see anything. Joe, what do you think? You probably know the guy.
No, the guarantee. I think that's interesting. I mean, I certainly understand how that works, and like you said, it's what is a guarantee? I mean, you can guarantee all the grafts will grow, but what happens when they don't? And there are times when not all the grafts grow. So, as far as I'm concerned, a graft growth guarantee is useless because it's going to happen to someone. And what do you do when that happens? Well, what matters is how the aftercare is addressed, and the any sort of issue with low growth. What is the guarantee aside from the graft growth? Is it a guarantee that another procedure will be done? Is it a guarantee of a possible refund? I mean, these are things that you need to consider. It's not the graft growth guarantee; it's the follow up if the grafts don't grow.
And that's kind of like a very gimmicky, salesy type of thing that a lot of guys use because they think, there's a lot of guys out there who are really good at what they do. They believe they need to use these tactics in order to compete. And it's nothing personal about this doctor or his clinic. I think Joe made a good point. You have to ask these questions. And you may end up going to this guy and calling me and saying, you know what, Spence, this guy is the greatest hair transplant surgeon, God's gift to hair transplants. But you need to kind of go in there with an open eye, ask all the right questions. And frankly, there are only a handful of guys, like two that I know of, and one's not even in the IHRS, that are utilizing the NeoGraft that I think are doing really good work with it at this point. I think the NeoGraft is the NeoGraft is 100% user dependent, and I have problems. There's the Troy implanter pen. There's other implanter pens. There are guys who are utilizing these pens and they're doing it well. There's one guy, I think, who's the Turkish guy that's using it, Joe?
Dogane?
I think it's Dogane that uses the Troy implanter. Guy's getting incredible results. He really is.
Yeah.
But I've also known guys. It really depends on your staff too, because you have to understand the staff is handling those grafts. And they're, every time that graft is touched and moved and inserted into a pen or into an implanter, it could be possibly damaged. So the people that are basically loading these devices really have to know and understand how to handle the grafts properly. They can't be sloppy. They can't be thinking about the fact that their boyfriend didn't show up for a date the night before, or whatever. They can't be hungover. And I call it the hangover factor because these are all things that guys don't really put into the equation when they're making a decision to have surgery. So to me, the less steps, the better. That's how I feel about it. But Dogane has a. Go ahead, Joe.
That's an interesting point. The less steps, the better, because it means the less handling, the better. And the interesting thing about these implanter pins is. Once the graft is scored and extracted, it's pulled out, and then the technicians are reloading into an actual implanter pin, and the rate of speed at which these technicians have to work in one of these more successful clinics that use this technique is blazingly fast.
It is.
I mean, so what you're talking about is a level of concentration that is unparalleled to be able to do this for hours on end.
Well, I will tell you this though. I don't see that here in the States. But these Turkish technicians, man, I got to tell you, some of these people, they just have a different work ethic.
Well, I've had some experience with these technicians and learning about them, and I don't know what it is about how they're able to do this, or what the any sort of details about the ethic, the work ethic, but it's impressive. No question about it.
I don't think these women are going out, getting loaded and going to the clubs and, and all the stuff that a lot of these, sadly, a lot of the girls that are working in the hair transplant industry, and, hopefully not for our docs, but, that they're doing. I see their Facebook pictures. These girls, they're going to work. They're trying to survive. Some of these younger girls probably have families already.
It's a job.
Yeah. So, but anyway, listen, and again, I do think, on a personal note, I've spoken to Dr. Voorhees. I think he's a very nice guy, and he seems like he's really committed to his patients. I'm just being honest. I haven't seen a complete application, and I'm not saying, like I said, he could be great. And from what I've seen, it seems like his work is pretty good. So just be careful. Just know what you're getting into, and it goes for any doctor, whether they're in the IHRS or they're not. You have to do your due diligence. I am not.
Let me say something about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say something about that.
Yeah.
When you are going to speak to any doctor, like Spencer said, it doesn't matter who it is. Don't forget one very important fact. You're interviewing him for a job. And so you have to act as if, you're not doing him any favors. He's coming to you because he wants your business. And so you have to conduct your consultation as if it's an interview where he's applying for a job, not the other way around. And I understand that, I've been there. It's nerve-wracking, it's daunting, it's intimidating to walk into a hair transplant clinic and talk to a complete stranger face-to-face about the issue that's been bothering you. And that's understandable. I've been there. But if you turn it around and you own the situation and go in this consultation like it's an interview and ask some serious questions, and with further research, you can figure out what these questions should be, but then you'll come out better informed. Because when you ask these right questions, I mean, they're going to take notice that you know what you're talking about, and that you're serious, and that you're not just some bystander off the street that saw the ad in the yellow pages.
And also make sure that they're willing to allow you to meet patients, even go in and see if you can view a procedure.
That's a good idea.
Another thing is, I also tell most guys to try to view a procedure as someone who's had a previous procedure with the same doctor. So he's going in for a second procedure. There's a reason why he's going in for a second procedure, is because he was probably happy with the first. So you're going to be able to speak to him about his initial experience and see what he's going through the second time around.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, like I said, I've been in touch with Dr. Voorhees over the last probably 6 or 8 months, and one thing I can tell you is that he's been really good about returning emails, any questions I have. The consultation was free back, and I think I went back in February or March, and since then I'll write him an email and he'll send it back within an hour and a half from his iPad. He's that kind of guy, and I can tell he's passionate about improving his techniques and trying to get a better result with each surgery.
Well, I will tell you that on a personal note, I like the guy, and I think that you're right. I get the exact same sense that you get. I just can't. He's just not part of the IHRS. I can't tell you. I don't know why he didn't complete his application. I don't know if it was a financial issue or whatever it was, but I can't. I'm not going to get on the phone and chase him and ask him why. He's got to practice it, deal with his practice the way he wants to. And I agree. I think he seems like a really nice guy. I think he's really dedicated. I mean, when I spoke to him, he was one of the more passionate guys, not asking. He's one of the few guys that did not ask about leads as far as being involved with the IHRS. And that means a lot.
Wow.
It wasn't about, okay, I know once I'm with you, I'm going to get so much business. He didn't even discuss that. So I think that speaks volumes for his character. He just wanted to be, apply to the group because he thought it was important to be a part of things, and he liked what we were doing. I like that about him.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
I think he's a guy who he has a good character.
Well, since I live here, it would be a nice option. I mean, I understand that you shouldn't limit yourself to, just your where you live to pursue a procedure. But, certainly it would be nice since I'm 30 minutes from his office. But it's something that I'm just taking very, very slowly. And do you think it would be out of line to just maybe next time I email him, maybe say, hey, whatever happened with your application? Or did you ever hear about the IAHRS?
I think he might be a little I don't know, he may be defensive, or he may not know how to answer you, or he may say, well, I never applied, or he may say, well, it was just too much money, or he may say, I mean, who knows? I mean, or he may say, you know what? I applied to the IHRS, and for whatever reason, I never followed through. That would be the truth. So I hope that he would say that. For me, I think you can ask him any question that you feel comfortable asking him. You may not want to put him on the spot, but if you feel you want to put him on the spot, then ask him straight out.
Exactly.
Exactly.
He shouldn't have any problem if there's nothing to hide. He shouldn't be indignant about.
Well, I will tell you,
from my perspective,
you'll get you'll get a deeper understanding of who he is by his answer. So I think it may not be a bad question to ask.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate you guys' insight. That's about all I had for today. But I just want to, I've just been kind of running over this stuff in my head, and it's I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. And but as things may change as I get older, I just wanted to have a little more education about these, like these procedures, especially with the doctors that are here where I am.
Yeah, listen, I this is what I think you should do, because you sound like you've done well on finasteride for a long time. You're kind of hedging, waiting for the future. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're not 100% happy with your hair right now. But remember, once you're cut, no matter what the surgery is. Just step back and, even if you're getting FUE, I mean, you can get shock loss. You can end up looking worse than you are right now. If you're holding your ground and you're okay and you feel comfortable enough in your own skin right now, I would just wait. I just don't think you should even, you might want to put it out of your mind for a while. I mean, are you doing this just based out of the fear that finasteride is not going to be working for you next year? Or in the coming years?
I have a feeling that it will keep that things in my, especially in the mid scalp and the crown are going to be good for a while. But just looking back over the last 12 or 13 years, I've been wearing hats to most things, and I see myself in pictures, and I'm just really not. I avoid swimming in windy situations, and I've just never really been happy with it. But I also realize that I don't want to get a case of hair greed and then make things worse. You know what I mean? And jump into something.
I would tell you, and Joe, you would give the same advice. If you have a moderate amount of hair on your head, maybe you're not 100% happy. Sometimes going in there and having that surgery kind of sets you off on a really bad, puts you in a bad place. You can go in a direction that is going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cause you major depression. It's going to be this emotional roller coaster. You're going to be waiting for the hair to grow in. If it doesn't grow correctly, then it's going to be a problem. If you get shock loss, it could end up being worse. Unless you really are at a point where you can no longer stand the way that you look, and you've progressed to the point where you think that even a procedure that is not 100% is going to make you look better. That's when you should consider surgery. Joe, what do you think?
Okay. I couldn't have said that better myself. I mean, like you said, if you can deal with your day-to-day and not be absolutely consumed in your own mind about the shortcomings of what you're going through, then I think you should hold off. But if it is something that's consuming you on a daily basis and it's influencing your comfort level and your happiness from day to day, then it is something to consider. But like Spencer said, once you're cut, you're cut. Doesn't matter what procedure it is. And no matter what guarantees are out there, no matter how many results you see, there's always that chance. And take it from me, I've seen it. I've lived it. I went through 2 bad transplants myself, and then I was thankfully repaired many years later to great success. But I've seen it from, clinics all over the world. Patient walks in looking for improvement and walks out a year later with a result that they're not happy with. And even
if everything went out, even if everything went well, even if it was like a textbook procedure, it's either, they had shock loss, or they just, they can see the difference, even if it's minute, between the transplanted grafts and their own hair, and it makes them feel less comfortable. There's so many nuances to having and accepting hair transplant surgery, and so many nuances to I think, the timing of having surgery, that it's not really talked about. And listen, you walk through the door of any of these surgeons, even the IHRS guys, there's a good chance you're a candidate, from what you're telling me. There's a good chance that they think they could improve your appearance. Believe me, especially the good guys, and especially a guy like Voorhees, in my opinion, even though he's not with us at this point, I don't think he wants to do any damage. He doesn't want to have to deal with that, and he doesn't want to harm anybody, of course. I think he's a good doctor. But he just doesn't know. No one knows. So listen.
Yeah.
I talk people out of surgery all the time. But the one thing is, I tell doctors who are part of my group all the time, no matter what I say, no matter how much I say surgery is the last resort, these guys are going to have surgery. It doesn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It really doesn't. So
that's true.
My goal is, just to tell people not to rush into it. And, maybe when you're 40, you'll think to yourself, I'm kind of glad I didn't do it. Or maybe by the time you're 40, you'll say it's time.
Yeah, I think I need to just take a step back and just give it a few more years and just continue to do my research where I can. And, and then obviously in the meantime, he's going to be trying to improve his techniques, and it doesn't sound like he's going anywhere. So it's going to be an option down the road, just as it is.
The guy's he's only going to get better, and you never know. He may even be an IHRS member at this point. Now that you bring him up again, maybe I will give him a call, for crying out loud. I mean, I remember he was a nice guy, but I will tell you that, the one thing, and I think you said it. It's going to be there. Surgery's going to be there. He's going to be there. And if you think you can wait. I would probably stop even communicating with anybody. Get off the forums. Give yourself 6 months to kind of stay away from it.
Yeah.
Don't email any doctor, whoever you're emailing back and forth. Just step back and just see how it is, because the more you're in communication with any doctor, anybody in the field, the more it's going to be on your mind, and the more you're going to think, well, maybe I could just get I can get 2,000 grafts, and then it's going to change my life. And
right, well, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
it's like you just constantly are thinking, well, what if I could just get it touched up, and think of how much happier I would be, and it's hard not to think that way, because when the wind hits it just right, or if somebody says, hey, we're having a pool party, and you just you're not comfortable enough to do that type of stuff anymore. It's like,
dude, I jump in the pool, I have paint running down my back. I mean, come on. I know what it's like. I do it anyway. I do it anyway at this point in my life.
For me to really feel comfortable, it just has to be cut pretty much every 2 or 3 weeks. It has to be in place perfectly, and it has to be sprayed in place. And if I can't do that, then I've got a hat on, at this point. But I think I can be, content with that, at least for a few more years, until I know for sure that the surgery is the right thing, and it is a last resort.
Well, I know I've kept you on the line for a while, and I just kind of wanted to get a feel for what you were going through. Like, what are you doing right now with your life? I know you were in the Navy. What do you do right now?
I actually have a small business. I work. I do custom woodworking, interior woodworking on custom homes here in Charleston.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just I do like trim packages where we go up and put in all the crown molding and. Well,
why don't you if you want to plug if you feel like it, plug the name of your business, and if there's some Norwoods listening in your area, maybe they'll hire you.
Absolutely, yeah. We're called Southern Artisan Woodwork, and we do mostly custom homes, and we do small jobs, built-in cabinetry, that kind of stuff. I've been a carpenter since I got out of the Navy, and I've just been working towards being self-employed, and I've had up to 3 people working for me at a time.
Dude, I think that's awesome, man. I'm an entrepreneur myself.
High end.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say I try to keep it on higher end homes. These custom homes. It's a big business here in Charleston. There's a lot of millionaires And there's also the historical homes downtown that I get to work on sometimes. So,
Well, here's the good news.
yeah, it's
Your job, you're allowed to wear a hat when you work, which is great.
that's right.
You make your own hours, you're doing your own thing. I mean, look, I think you're in a pretty good position. You sound like you want to do, you would be happier if you had a little bit more hair, but let me tell you, you're going to be you're going to be much more miserable if you make a mistake.
Yeah, it's
Hey, real quick, caller, let me ask you, have you heard of the company in Charleston called Green Floor? Green Floor
I don't
Clean?
think so, actually. I don't think so.
He's it's an old buddy of mine that's also in Charleston, and he does flooring. So, considering what you're doing, I
Great.
thought maybe, yeah. But anyway, sorry, just had to ask.
Ring a bell. It doesn't ring a bell. But real quick, yeah, I just, I'm kind of at the point where, like, I get a little anxious when I have to go to, like, family functions and things like that where I can't wear a hat.
Yeah.
It's like, where, are people looking at my, my giant forehead and, how many more years do I have before it gets real bad?
Are you married?
I'm married. Yeah, I've been.
Okay.
This will be my 9-year anniversary this January, and I'm also expecting
Congratulations.
our first. We're expecting our first child here in January.
That's incredible, dude. You're married. You got your own business. I understand that you're uncomfortable in your own skin. How about this? Would you ever consider? And I know for guys who are calling the show, it's like walking on the moon or something. I mean, it's so outrageous. Would you ever consider wearing like a partial hair system just to kind of lower your hairline?
Yeah, and I don't really know how that stuff works, but I haven't ruled it out because I do. I mean, I've gotten some rude comments in the past, and I know there's a little element of truth to the fact that I have a slightly bigger head.
Well, put it this way: you're not going to have to give anybody the talk. You're married, You're not, so, what you can do today is, you can go to one of these online shops. You can tell them what you want. They can kind of guide you through it. It's very inexpensive, a couple of $100. They'll tell you how to take your measurements and stuff. And, you can try them out. If it doesn't work, you throw it in the garbage. It'll cost you $200, whatever. But, you kind of use it like a contact lens. You can change it every couple of months. And, I have seen guys who, they've had like yarmulke spots. I've tried them in the back, I choose to paint,
right.
But they can look really, really good. And I've seen some really good frontal units too. So, I mean, if if you're married, you're going to have a kid and your wife's just going to love it, especially if you look better. Then what's the difference? Why go through surgery? Consider that.
You don't have to shave, like, if you have like a slick bald area and you don't have, I mean, would you have to shave more of your frontal area?
Not if you have no hair in the front. You just put it in the areas where you have no hair.
Right.
So say you want to add a quarter of an inch to the hairline. You can do that.
Wow. Yeah. See, I didn't even realize that. I'm glad you brought that up.
There's a company. There's a company called. I recommend these guys, but I just wish they would change their website because it's kind of not great to deal with. But there's a company called coolpiece.com.
Yep.
And there's another company which I think is more expensive, but it's called Hair Direct. I think the guys at Cool Piece might be more apt to work with the partials, and I think they have a really good return policy. And I don't know exactly who's going to be better, but I think they're going to be cheaper. But there's another company called
sample of your hair. Or?
Yeah, you can give them a sample of your hair, but basically you can pick out of what I would do is I would contact these guys, tell them what you want to do, and tell them that you want to kind of experiment with some throwaway stuff, and ask them if you can just buy some remnants. It may not even be your hair color, just so you can kind of glue it on and play with it. Maybe they'll charge you a couple $100 for some remnants, some throwaway stuff, with different densities and different colors. And then if you feel like you can wear this thing, then you can order it. And I think there are companies out there that'll do that. Hair Direct may be more apt to do that because they seem they have more stock. And there's another company called Top Lace, which I heard is pretty good, and I think they even have a forum. So you can check that out.
And how secure are those things? I mean, can you kind of clip it into the other hair. How does that work? I mean,
you're going to have to use glue.
Stick
You're
on
going to
there?
have to use glue or tape.
Sure.
So
Okay.
once you glue that on, it's not going anywhere unless, I mean, it'll probably stick on for at least, they say these guys have service every 6 weeks. I think that's ridiculous because you always can see a guy who's walking around who only gets his hair serviced every 6 weeks. That's the guy you know is wearing a rug. But I'd say,
Right.
if you learn how to finesse it, whatever it is, if you sweat a lot, you work out, you probably have to kind of like reattach to some degree, maybe once a week. But it could be a great option, especially if you just want to use it even as a transition before you have surgery.
Sure. And to be able to have that
And
option,
here's the thing about these options. I think it's safe to say that the message that we're trying to get across to you is surgery is the last resort.
Right.
And if you can find an alternative that you're comfortable with, be it maintaining where you are, just taking the medication and accepting the situation you're in, and owning it, or taking further steps and dealing with a hair system of some sort. I've seen a lot of them up close and personal through client interaction, and there are some hair systems out there that are fantastic with the quality and the naturalness, and they can be very difficult to detect. If you're willing to put yourself in a position of regular maintenance,
Right.
and understanding the limitations that you have to go through, then a hair system is an awesome alternative because ultimately you're not getting cut. It's
Right.
just a maintenance issue that you have to commit to.
And and if your major issue is just you're not 100% happy with the way you look, and going to family functions, but you have a woman who loves you, you're about to have a kid, you don't have to worry about going on the dating scene and having to give the talk to somebody, then you win, man. In my view, then that's the easiest option and the cheapest option out there. And if it doesn't work out, you just you take the thing off and you throw in the garbage. And you're out a couple $100, and that's it.
Yeah, it's a good call.
All right, man. Well, listen, I gotta take a piss, so I gotta go. I'm gonna take a
Same
break.
here.
But listen, thank you so much for calling. I wish you the best of luck. And you know what? If you do speak to Dr. Voorhees, tell him we said good things about him on the show because I do think he's a nice guy, and I think he really does care about his patients.
I'll do it. I appreciate that.
All right, man. You take care. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Spencer. Talk to you later.
You got it.
Bye-bye.
888-659-3727. Joe, I'm going to take a quick break. You want to hold on for a while?
I will hold on for a while.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good. All right, we'll put you on hold. 888-659-3727. I'm Spencer Kobren. You're listening to and watching The Ball Truth. I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back right after this.
The man who's helping to make hair loss history.
They wish to cure us, but I say we are the cure.
It's Spencer David Kobren.
Hey guys, thanks for hanging out. Sorry I had to take a quick break. 888-659-3727. You were tuning into and listening and watching The Ball Truth, self-help radio for guys, and of course for girls who get it. Sadly, 40% of hair loss sufferers, that was abrupt, 40% of hair loss sufferers are women in this country, and that's a huge percentage. I just did an interview for kind of an offshoot of PBS television, an online version, or something about one of their sites. And, they were really surprised at how many women, especially young women, are suffering with hair loss. So I know that mostly guys call this broadcast, and, I say it's self-help radio for guys. Women, don't be shy. If you're dealing with hair loss, if you want to talk about how it affects your life, this is your safe place, too. 888-659-3727. I'm going to pot Joe Tillman back up. He's still with us. I'm going to take a couple of calls before we close out the show. But, Joe, when I think about this last caller, the story completely changed for me once he told me that he's been married for 9 years and he's about to have a kid and he's got his own business. The guy's got his shit together. A lot of the guys who are considering surgery, at a younger age, or even, he's not that young, but he's not old. I mean, he's what, 35, 36 years old. He's still pretty young. A lot of these guys are kind of desperate to move on with their lives, and they think that taking this step is going to get them to where they're going to, they're going to get the girl of their dreams, they're going to get the job of their dreams and all that stuff. So they kind of jump into it. This guy has got it all already, so he just needs to take his time.
What I like about his story is that he's taken the time to do things right. He's really researching things. He's taking it slow. And like you said, his story, or my impression of the story, changed when he, expressed his situation. And like you said, a lot of guys think that a hair transplant is a magic bullet that'll cure all their issues. This guy has no issues to cure. I mean, he's married, he's got a kid on the way, successful small business owner.
Right.
This is something he's looking for just to kind of accentuate his other successes, and I can understand that.
Just like you said, he mentioned, he's concerned to go to family functions. I get that. I avoided certain things, especially at the beginning of my hair loss. I avoided certain family functions because my looks, in my opinion, were changing, and I just couldn't deal with it. And it was for a very short period of time that I did that, though. But I certainly get it, and he just wants to feel, find a way to feel comfortable in his own skin. I'm telling you, man, that's why I think, and so many people have this, really bad impression of hair pieces because of what we see every day, because of the bad stuff that's been out there for so long.
It's not just the bad stuff that's been out there so long, but like I've been saying for years, the media itself is responsible for the image that hair pieces have and hair transplants as well.
That's true.
Because it's always references the comic relief, in movies, it's, the hair piece gets blown off in the wind. Ah, ha, ha, that's so funny.
Yeah.
And the news stories, about hair transplants, they always start the story. It's not plugs anymore.
I know. It's
always referencing that era when it was a joke, basically. And I think that has a lot to do with it, and that's why those segments of hair restoration are looked down upon.
Huge social stigma, though. Wearing a piece. I mean, it's funny. I'm going to take your calls in a second, guys. So hold on. I was contacted by this chick that I knew in high school about her husband, and she was asking me questions, saying that her husband is, interested in doing something about his hair. He saw this media, this broadcast about something about a laser helmet on their local news, and he wanted to ask me some questions. And I was asking her some questions. I asked him to send her, pictures of her husband to me. I checked him out. Guy was losing his hair for many years. It was like, this guy was a full-blown Norwood, never coming back. But, it's like he didn't even realize it, and neither did she. So anyway, I said, he may be a good candidate for a really good light hair system. And her first reaction was, no rugs. No way. Yeah. Because, and if she were to see this guy, if he's unhappy with his hair loss, they're married, they have children, they've been married for 20 years, in a really well done, very light, say 50% hair, density hair system where you're going to see scalp, and it just looks like, wait a second, how'd this guy get so much more hair? That subtle change would make all the difference in his appearance, and no one would ever know. But her first reaction was no rugs. And then we started talking about hair transplants, and she called them plugs. I'm like, you know what? Have your husband call me. It's not her fault. This is they're well-heeled, well-educated people. It's just, it is the way that society looks at both forms of hair restoration. And it's unfortunate. Joe, I'm going to take a call.
It is unfortunate. Yeah.
Hey, man, you're on the air. Who's this? Hey, what can I do for you, man? You're on the air. I can hear you on the other side, man. Do you want to say something, or do you want me to hang up? All right. 888-659-3727. Guys get stage fright,
Yeah.
It's the way that it is. So, you know what? The guy's calling right back. I'll let him wait. If he really wants to talk to us, he'll stay on hold. 888-659-3727. Guys, we have about 15 more minutes left to the broadcast. I'm going to take another call. We'll see who this is. And Guy just hung up. It's unbelievable. All right, guys, we're just gonna wind down the show. We're gonna wind down the show. I want to thank Joe Tillman for hanging out as usual.
Pleasure.
Joe, any appearances? Anything? You want to plug anything? I'm just kidding. Isn't that what they do? Every time you're on a show, you got to plug something.
Usually, but nothing's really going on right now.
There's nothing. I'm glad. I'm glad that we talked about FUE, though. I'm glad that it's interesting that you've come around when it comes to whether it's the artist or any type of technology like this, because we were both pretty staunchly against this stuff at the beginning. And I guess the bottom line is you got to keep an open mind, because if you don't, let me tell you something. A lot of these guys in the ISHRS, they're starting to flip out. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they believe that, surgical hair restoration is going to be, it's what's happening is that the market is spreading out and they're going to kind of lose hold of the market. They shouldn't think that way. They should think, well, you know what? We were here first. We're the real experts. And if we get a hold of these, this type of technology, then we're going to be able to really, work with it and finesse it and, incorporate it into our practice the right way. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Now, there are some IHRS members who are accepting technology and embracing it, which is great. And, it's actually pretty exciting news that Hassan Wong decided to go this route and to get a machine, which I think is great. And I think that there's some other guys like there's another guy who got one. I forgot the latest guy who got one. Not the guy in Connecticut, but somebody else. But the guys who you would never think would go in that direction. So the bottom line, guys, is that you got to have an open mind.
And that's what it comes down to. One thing I've realized is that, things like ARTAS and, some other technologies, they're not only not going away, they're going to grow. And, the way to look at things now is to find organizations that have decided to take on this new technology and use it responsibly and incorporate it into their existing mantra of do no harm.
Right.
And utilize this to the best of their ability to continue their winning streak, as it were.
That's right.
And there are too many clinics out there right now, as far as I'm concerned, that are jumping on board this industry simply because it's a low cost of entry with a neograft or even an artist. I mean, to get an artist, it's $250,000 or a lease option. But you don't have the overhead as far as the staff, like you would with a traditional strip clinic.
That's right.
You don't have the space requirements that you would with a traditional outfit. And so what we're seeing is an explosion of options as far as clinics go.
But you're seeing an explosion of backroom hair transplantation. That's what you're seeing.
Exactly. No, exactly. And so, the smart thing to do is to accept this change, which I have, and to acknowledge those clinics that are utilizing this to its highest potential.
Let me tell you, there were guys who were just...
Ultimately, a clinic is only as good as the tool that they use and how they use it.
That's exactly what it is. And that's what these guys need to realize. But this is what's going to happen. Until we get enough information out there to the public, which sadly takes time. A lot of bad guys are going to get their hands on these devices. It's already happening, in my view. And again, this is just my opinion. Protected by the First Amendment. A lot of bad guys getting their hands on the, again, in my view, on the neograft. A lot of crappy work being done here in Los Angeles alone. It's unbelievable what I'm seeing. And the stuff that I'm seeing promoted, eyebrow transplantation with a neograft, big no-no in my view, big no-no. But cosmetic surgeons and plastic surgeons are putting in their back room, and they're hiring these techs, these roving techs, to do entire procedures. There's a great blog, actually, that Mark Dower wrote, who's an IHRS member. If you go to our forum, He posted a blog in the IHRS section. It's a direct link to his site about a eyebrow hair transplant correction that he had to do, which was it was ridiculous. Basically, it was performed in the clinic of a very well-known dermatologist here in Los Angeles, extremely famous. Got himself a neograft, had a per diem tech perform not one but two eyebrow transplants on this poor woman, and basically got no growth, scarring, it was a total mess. What Mark Dower did for this person was a miracle. His corrective procedure. Now, Mark, which I think is a lot of guys, listen, FUE is an incredible technique, and this is where the future is in hair transplantation. But for eyebrow transplants, people don't realize that doing small strips and really meticulously dissecting those grafts under a microscope, in my view, at least at this point, is key to really producing great grafts for eyebrow transplants. So I think, the people that are undergoing eyebrow transplants, women have to, maybe sacrifice having a small strip removed in order to get the best possible result. And
I think that's a fantastic approach, especially for women, because the issue of what if you want to shave your head is not something that is, in their future.
It's not. It's not. And what? These punches are taking out very robust grafts. And frankly, these grafts really have to be cut to size when it comes to eyebrows.
Right. Yeah. And, the thing is, you mentioned Mark Dower. He's one of the doctors that I've been watching because, a lot of doctors that are out there, I don't want to say a lot, but there's some doctors out there doing some really good work that don't get the type of attention that other clinics do. And I think that he's one of those doctors in clinics that deserves more attention than he's gotten in the past.
Well,
he's doing some solid work. I like what he's doing.
It's interesting that you say that because, he has chosen to only work within, our resources. He's an IHRS member. Mm-hmm. He loves being part of the Bald Truth. I've had him on the show. We're actually going to be doing another interview. And he he's told me he's made this conscious decision because he really, he just wants to be a part of what he believes is, the most credible resources. And I admire that. So instead of spreading himself thin, and instead of, trying to get himself out there like everybody else and on every single resource, he made a conscious decision. And I have to tell you, between me and you and the thousands of people listening to the show, he has told me that it has served him extremely well. He doesn't necessarily need to be in, you see these lists on other sites of, the short list that these guys who live on the message forums make. He doesn't need to be on there.
Yeah.
He does incredibly solid work that most of these guys can't even compete with, in my opinion. The guy is doing incredible work. He's doing he has a realistic approach, doing realistic numbers on a consistent basis. And I have never received a complaint about this guy, ever. And that is rare. Another guy that no one talks about online is Paul McAndrews, who is extremely conservative, who has very happy patients. He charges a lot of money, but he gets it because he spends the entire time. He performs the strip himself. He creates the recipient sites, and he implants the grafts. And there are people who are willing to pay for that.
And that's a valuable option. I mean, some people they feel a lot more confident in what they're getting themselves into when the doctor has 100% involvement in the procedure from beginning to end. That's not to say there's anything wrong with technicians. I mean, God knows I've got my experience with that. But there's a subset of the hair restoration patients
that prefer
that prefer to have 100% involvement. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And they're willing to pay for it.
And they're willing to pay for it. And, Dr. McAndrews is obviously doing a good job with that.
Look, both McAndrews and Dower do. And, it would be, I cannot tell you the celebrities that they've worked on, and they can't tell me in certain circumstances unless that particular celebrity has contacted me initially, which has happened. Yeah. But celebrities end up going to these guys. And, there's a reason for it. There really is. Now, we see a lot of bad celebrity hair transplants. But I have a neighbor lives very close to me that ended up going to he may not want to say who he went to, but someone who I recommended. I'm not going to tell you who the guy is, who the neighbor is either. And he's kind of a little hush-hush about it, but extremely wealthy, well-known celebrity. And he chose to go to somebody who we recommended who, is not necessarily on everybody's short list. Let's put it that way. And he's blown away. He traveled a little bit. He actually went out of state. But the point needs to be clear, and I think you made a good point. There's a lot of guys out there who don't get that short list notoriety that you see on some of these networks and on these forums. And it's unfortunate. And what happens is, for whatever reason, whoever is driving the flow of information on these sites, they're hyper-focused on like a small group of guys. And I think that's unfair. And look, I think this guy brought this guy Voorhees. Again, just because he's not part of what we do doesn't mean he's not a good guy and doesn't mean that he's not doing good work. There's plenty of guys out there like that.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, there are the short lists out there, and there is a reason that these doctors are on the short list. But at the same time, there are other guys that deserve just as much consideration, if not more, that are not on those lists. And like Dr. Dower, I think he's a fantastic example of that, because like I said, I've been watching his work and I've been impressed. And there's some others out there as well. And I think it's important for people to realize that when they go to these forums, just because they see the same names on multiple short lists that people present,
it's the same. It's the same three or
four of options to consider.
It's the same 3 or 4 guys, and the reason it's the same 3 or 4 guys is because these guys have had a strong foothold in the online world. That's it. But I've said that all the time, and you know what? These 3 or 4 guys are all guys that I recommend. That's it's just the way that it is. But these guys, people who go to the message forums, take the message forums as the gospel, and they make decisions based on, the anonymous postings of people that they will never meet. They will never know. They don't know where this is coming from. Frankly, who spends, unless you're in the industry, who spends, 10 hours a day posting on a message forum, posting their opinions about doctors on message forums? There's got to be a reason. And we have no idea where this information is coming from. Either it's a very obsessed person, or, these are people who are connected to clinics, or they're people who own the forums. Whatever it is, people have to kind of open their eyes and realize what goes on out there. You have to do your own due diligence. I created these resources. I wrote the Bald Truth. I do the show. I founded the IHRS. I created the first recommended list ever to be published in the world, in any profession. But it's not the gospel. You have to do your own due diligence. This is just a good starting point. These guys that we recommend are all doing great work. Most of them have all had unhappy patients at some point in their careers, but they're doing consistently really good work. But you as an individual have to go out there and meet patients, and don't take the word of some stranger online, especially if they're not involved in the field. Anyway, that's my rant for the night.
I like that rant. That was a good one.
I appreciate it. Joe Tillman, thank you.
I feel better because of it.
You should. I'm going to finish my drink, and I'm going to get some dinner. Joe Tillman, always a pleasure. We will be able to hook up everything for you to the next time that you're on the program. I like to have you on video, so people can. I would like that. People can see your incredible head of hair.
Bald Truth Talk North is ready to go when you're ready.
We are just about ready. We just put a new Skype machine in house, and the only reason I couldn't do it today is because I had to use my working Skype feed to Skype to GFQ. And I couldn't get the other machine working. But next time we'll make it happen.
Sounds good.
All right, man. Listen, thanks a lot. I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to give out the websites and call it a night.
Well done.
All right, you take it easy.
You have a great night.
All right. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, hanging out with us. I hope we were able to help you guys who were, maybe on the fence about surgical hair restoration, guys who might not really be candidates for surgery, just, you got to know what you're getting into. It's not a one-size-fits-all procedure. There's no doubt that in my mind that the field is going to change tremendously in the next 24 to 48 months. There's a lot of really interesting technology coming down the pike. I think the old world, old school surgical hair restoration is it's no longer going to exist. The strip procedures, while I think there is a place for strip, there's no doubt you cannot get 100% of your DHT-resistant hair to be moved via FUE. You will not get 100% of that sweet spot. A combination of strip and FUE for, the long haul, for the guys, for the Norwood 5s and 6s who really need a lot of hair to be moved, that's probably your best option. However, in general, strip is going by way of the dodo. FUE is here to stay, and these devices that are making it a little more dummy-proof, and that will eventually make it, a procedure that many more people will be able to have. This is coming to fruition. This is happening. So love it or hate it, this is the future of surgical hair restoration. So be prepared and learn about all of your options. And you know what? A lot of great doctors out there. The practice of medicine is very unique. Everyone practices it differently to some degree. But don't take everyone's word as the gospel. Have multiple consultations when you decide to have surgical hair restoration, if you decide to go through surgery. Read about everything you need to read about and speak to patients and speak to multiple doctors. And if you find a few doctors have similar opinions, those are the guys you kind of narrow down your search to. Anyway, guys, we got to go. Website's thebaldtruth.com, of course, for archives of this broadcast and to watch this broadcast live on Tuesday nights when we do air. We're airing most Tuesdays now. If you want to interact with other hair loss sufferers, check out our message forum, which is baldtruthtalk.com. Again, take whatever you read on the message forum with a grain of salt, please. If you want to get some good basic information about hair loss, obviously check out the American Hair Loss Association. We're going to be making some really incredible updates on that site shortly, a lot of changes to be made in the next few months, and actually some exciting stuff. So check out AmericanHairLoss.org. Until next time, be strong, God bless, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for any inconvenience you may have been put to prior to the programme, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And if you could now leave by the exits at the rear, that'd be splendid. Thank you. Good night.